That was the first thing I noticed when my mother-in-law slid it across my dining table, right between the untouched slices of chocolate cake and the paper crowns my son had insisted everyone wear. Pink. Soft, sweet, innocent. A color that should have belonged to joy, not the kind of pain that knocks the breath out of a woman's chest. I remember the sound her nails made as she pushed it forward, a slow scrape on the wood, like she wanted to carve the moment into my memory. And maybe she did. Maybe that was her intention all along. My hands were still sticky from lighting candles. My son was in the living room, bouncing on the couch, laughing with his cousins. His father, well, he was somewhere in the house, pretending to help, pretending to care, pretending that this day, this family, meant something to him. "Open it," she whispered. Not warm, not gentle, not like a grandmother who came to celebrate her grandson's 5th birthday. Her voice held that thin, sharp politeness she used only when she was about to cut me down. I didn't open it, not immediately, because some part of me already knew the contents. Not the details, no, but the weight of it. The heaviness sat in my stomach before the truth ever reached my eyes. I wiped my hands on my apron. I tried to smile. "Let me serve the children first. They're waiting." "This can't wait." She said it like a warning or a promise. And in that moment, even with the sound of children's laughter and balloons skimming the ceiling, I felt cold. The kind of cold that sinks into your bones before you can stop it. I don't know how long I stared at that envelope, but eventually the room seemed too quiet, even with all the noise around me. So I sat down, took a breath, pressed my thumb to the flap. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Just one. And at the top, in bold letters, were the words, "Notice of intent to divorce." I didn't cry. Not then. I didn't scream. I didn't ask why. I just stared at the words, my heart beating so loud I could hear it in my ears. And my mother-in-law, she folded her hands in her lap like she had done something noble, something righteous, something a woman like me should be grateful for. Her lips curved into the smallest smile. "He'll sign it soon," she said. "The sooner you accept it, the easier this will be for everyone." Everyone. Not me. Everyone else. And just like that, on the day I brought my son into this world, she tried to break the family I fought so hard to build. But before I tell you why she did it, before I tell you what my husband hid, what she schemed, and what happened when their secret finally came out, let me go back, because endings only make sense when you understand the beginning. Normal life. Setup. Before that pink envelope entered my life, things weren't perfect, but they weren't broken either. My name is Leela, 32 years old, mother of one little boy named Jonah, a homemaker for the last 6 years, ever since my husband and I agreed that I would stop working to raise our son. At the time, it felt like a joint decision, a promise that we were building something together. We lived in a small, warm house on a quiet street, the kind where neighbors left lemons on your doorstep and children rode bicycles without fear. Nothing fancy, nothing grand, just comfortable. And honestly, I liked my life. My mornings began with the smell of oatmeal simmering on the stove and Jonah tugging at my sleeve asking if he could crack the eggs. I'd put on soft music, open the kitchen window, and feel the breeze carry the scent of jasmine inside. Small moments, but they mattered. They were mine. My husband, Mark, usually left early, too early. I used to think it was work. Construction jobs paid well only if you took the long shifts. He'd kiss Jonah's forehead, give me a distracted nod, grab his coffee, and go. Not affectionate, not cold, just distant. I used to tell myself that was marriage. Love settles, passion cools, people get tired. And yet, despite the cracks I refused to see, our home still felt safe. Except when she arrived, my mother-in-law, Evelyn. A woman who could enter a room and make the temperature drop 10 degrees. Sharp eyes, sharper tongue, perfect posture, perfect judgment. Nothing I ever did, no meal, no party, no parenting choice was good enough. She didn't yell, she didn't argue. She simply made comments that stayed with me long after she left. You look tired, dear. Maybe some women aren't meant to handle both motherhood and marriage. That boy is too attached to you. Children need balance. Mark works hard. You should try to look more presentable when he comes home. I'd nod, smile politely, then cry quietly in the bathroom where no one could hear. But I endured her presence because of Jonah, because every child deserves a grandmother, even if she never truly embraced me. Every Sunday we had dinner together. Every holiday she orchestrated events like a general preparing for war. Every birthday she insisted on being involved. Except this year, she didn't ask what Jonah wanted. She didn't offer to help decorate or plan. She didn't even call ahead. She just arrived. On the dot, dressed too formally for a children's party, holding a gift bag in one hand and that envelope tucked neatly into the other. I should have known then. I should have paid attention. That hindsight is a cruel friend, always whispering what you should have seen, should have noticed, should have done. Still, before everything fell apart, my days looked ordinary, predictable, peaceful even. I would pack Jonah's small backpack, walk him to preschool, and chat with the other moms near the gate. We'd talk about recipes, tantrums, husbands who forgot anniversaries. Nothing heavy, nothing dramatic. When I returned home, I cleaned, cooked, folded laundry. The quiet was lonely sometimes, but bearable. When Mark returned at night, he'd eat quickly, shower, and collapse into bed. We barely talked. I didn't want to admit how much that bothered me, but I loved my family. I believed in my marriage. I believed in him. So when that envelope came, when Evelyn sat there with calm eyes and cruel intentions, it wasn't just the marriage certificate she tried to tear apart. It was the life I had built with my bare hands, day after day, year after year. But the truth, the real truth, is that she had been preparing for this long before the envelope ever arrived. I just hadn't seen the signs yet. Not then. But they were coming. And the first clue arrived weeks before the birthday party. Small, subtle, easy to dismiss. But life has a way of revealing everything in time. The first clue came on a Thursday morning, a plain, gray sort of day, the kind where the sky hangs low and everything feels a little heavier than it should. I was washing dishes when my phone buzzed on the counter. Jonah was at preschool. Mark was already gone. The house was quiet, too quiet. The message was from an unknown number. I saw him again today. Just that. Nothing else. I stared at it for a long moment, confused. Saw who? And again? I typed back, "Who is this?" But before I could hit send, another message appeared. "I don't want to cause trouble. You deserve to know." A chill crawled up my spine. Not cold, more like the feeling you get when someone is watching you, even when you're alone. I typed again, "You have the wrong number." And after a few seconds, all I got was, "I'm sorry." Then nothing. No calls, no follow-up, no explanation, just silence. I deleted the conversation, telling myself it must have been spam or someone making a mistake. People misdial all the time. Wrong wife, wrong partner, wrong assumption. But the truth is, the message stayed in my mind like a thorn under the skin. When Mark came home that night, I watched him more closely. He walked in, shoulders slumped, smelling faintly of sawdust and something else, something unfamiliar. Not perfume, not alcohol, more like a different detergent on his clothes, a different environment. I asked, "Rough day?" He shrugged, sat down heavily at the table. "Same as always." He didn't look at me when he said it. He didn't kiss me hello. He didn't mention the upcoming birthday party for Jonah, something he normally looked forward to. Instead, he rubbed his temples, sighed, and asked what was for dinner. It wasn't unusual behavior, not exactly, but the message lingered in my head, making everything feel slightly off. That was the first moment I felt something shifting, like the ground beneath my marriage had quietly begun to move. The second clue came a week later. I was folding laundry in the living room while Jonah played with his toy dinosaurs on the rug. His tiny fingers made the plastic creatures walk across the carpet, and every few minutes he'd roar softly, giggling when I pretended to be scared. It was one of those peaceful afternoons that made the world feel right. Then Mark's phone buzzed on the coffee table. He never left it lying around. He was the type to keep it in his pocket, even at home. But he was in the shower, and it sat there buzzing, the screen lighting up again and again. I glanced at it, not meaning to intrude, just reacting to the noise. The notification preview flashed, "Don't forget tonight." My heart stuttered. It was a message from a number saved only as A. No emoji, no last name, just one letter. Another buzz. Same time? Same place? I froze. My hands stopped moving. Even Jonah seemed to pause, as if he felt the air shift. I shouldn't have looked. I know that. But something deep in me, something instinctive, protective, pulled me toward the phone. I didn't open it. I didn't touch it. But my heartbeat changed. Quick, uneven, scared. Mark came out of the bathroom a minute later, towel around his neck, humming. He grabbed his phone, without looking at me, and quickly turned its screen down. I swallowed. "Everything okay?" He hesitated a beat too long. "Yeah, work stuff." Work stuff at night, on a weekend. I forced a smile, but inside, a knot began to form. The third clue was small, but it was the one that settled in my chest like lead. I was in the kitchen making tea when Evelyn showed up unannounced, as she often did. She didn't like to call ahead. She said it made her feel like a guest in her son's home. She sat at the table, perfectly upright, gloved hands folded neatly on her lap. "Is Mark home?" she asked. "No, he left early today." "Oh," she arched her eyebrows. "Funny." I thought his shift didn't start until noon. I paused, teaspoon hovering above my cup. That's what he told me. She smiled, a thin, calculating smile, the kind that made me feel like she knew something I didn't. She stayed only a few minutes, long enough to comment on my curtains, my posture, and how Jonah was a bit too attached to me lately. But when she left, I stood at the window and watched her walk to her car. She paused at the door, glanced back at the house, and smirked. That smirk, I would recognize it anywhere. The smirk of someone who had already chosen sides, and it wasn't mine. Over the next month, Mark grew stranger. He started coming home later, showering immediately, keeping his phone face down, avoiding conversations, avoiding me. When I asked if everything was okay, he'd snap, "I'm tired, Leela. Not everything is about you." That sentence hurt more than I let him see. But still, I tried. I cooked his favorite meals. I left him encouraging notes in his lunchbox. I ironed his shirts even when I didn't want to. Because that's what wives do, right? They try. They hold families together. They carry the weight even when they're breaking inside. And yet, the distance between us stretched wider each day. Until finally, the night before Jonah's birthday, something happened that I couldn't ignore. I walked into the living room after putting Jonah to bed, and Mark was on the phone. Not talking, whispering. "I told you I'd handle it. Tomorrow is perfect. Yes, she won't fight it. No, she trusts me. She has no idea." His back was to me. His shoulders relaxed in a way they never relaxed with me anymore. And then the words that made my stomach drop. "After tomorrow, she'll be out of the picture for good." I didn't move, didn't breathe. He ended the call, turned, and almost jumped when he saw me. "Who were you talking to?" I asked quietly. He forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Just work." Work. Always work. But his hand was trembling. And that was the exact moment, I knew something was deeply wrong. I didn't know the details yet. I didn't know the full betrayal. But the clues were no longer whispers. They were sirens. And the next day, on our son's 5th birthday, everything became clear. Because the pink envelope wasn't the beginning. It was the reveal. The morning of Jonah's 5th birthday should have felt joyful. I tried to make it joyful. I really did. I woke up early, blew up balloons before Mark got out of bed, strung a banner across the kitchen doorway that read, "Happy birthday, little explorer." Jonah loved space, so I drew tiny planets in the corners, even though my drawing skills were laughable at best. When Jonah came downstairs, hair sticking up, still warm with sleep, he gasped when he saw everything. The sound of it filled me with something warm and pure. For a brief moment, the heaviness of the last month lifted. "Mommy, Mommy, look!" He pointed at the banner. "At the Saturn! You made it the right number of rings!" My heart squeezed. His joy was everything. Mark came down a few minutes later, wearing a polite smile that didn't quite fit his face. He ruffled Jonah's hair, kissed my cheek, a cold, distracted kiss, and poured himself coffee. He checked his phone 3 times during breakfast. "She won't fight it. She trusts me." The words had haunted me all night. I kept waiting for a moment of clarity, a chance to ask, "What exactly are you planning for today?" But Jonah was there, babbling excitedly about cake and dinosaurs and astronauts, and the question caught in my throat. After breakfast, I sent Mark to get the mail while I cleaned up. It was a small thing, a simple request, something he did all the time. But this time felt different. He hesitated. Something flickered across his face, annoyance, reluctance, fear, and then he nodded and went outside. I watched from the window without meaning to. His steps were slow, purposeful, almost staged. He opened the mailbox, paused, and for a moment simply stared into it. Then he pulled out the mail, a few envelopes, a package, and the pink one. Familiar. Wrong. He stood there holding it for too long, like he wasn't sure whether to bring it inside or burn it on the spot. When he finally came back in, he placed the stack of mail on the counter, as casual as a man placing poker chips. But the pink envelope, he slid it to the bottom of the stack, as though hiding it would change what it meant. "More bills," he said lightly, "nothing important." I nodded, my face neutral. Inside, my heart twisted. I waited until he went upstairs, claiming he needed to make a work call. Then I pulled the mail toward me, and there it was. The envelope. Soft pink. My name written on the front, but not in his handwriting. The loops were too neat, too elegant, too careful. And something inside it, something small and flat, shifted when I picked it up. My fingers trembled. I opened the envelope. Inside was a single photograph. A photograph of Mark. Not staged, not posed. He was standing in a parking lot beside a woman I had never seen before. Tall, dark hair, strikingly pretty. She was laughing, leaning toward him like she knew him well. Too well. But the part that stole the air from my lungs wasn't the woman. It was the timestamp in the corner. The day he told me he was working late. The day he came home exhausted. The day he said, "I'm doing all this for us." A sound escaped me. Not a sob. Just a small, broken exhale. I flipped the photo over. On the back were 5 words written in the same elegant handwriting. "You deserve to know everything." My hands shook. My vision blurred. I didn't hear Mark come down the stairs. "What's that?" His voice was too calm, too even. I turned the photo over, hiding the writing, but he'd already seen it. His face drained of color, his jaw tightened. Then he forced a smile, strained, frantic. "Lila," he said softly, "it's not what you think." Those words, the classic line, the cliché that makes your blood run cold. I set the photo on the table between us. His eyes flicked to it, then to me, then to the stairs, as if calculating where Jonah was, how loud our voices were allowed to get. I kept my voice quiet, steady. "Who is she?" He swallowed hard. His throat bobbed. A coworker. She, it's not like that." The lie was paper thin, barely standing. "Then why did someone send me a picture of you with her and write that I deserve to know everything?" He didn't answer. Not immediately. He pressed his lips together. His nostrils flared. His fingers curled into fists. And then, a softness. Fake. Rehearsed. "Lila," he said quietly, "listen, I didn't want to tell you yet. I've been planning something. For us." "For us?" "Yes." He nodded eagerly like a man building a lie with wet sand. "It's a surprise. Today was supposed to be the day, actually. I didn't want you to find out like this." Something dark fluttered in my stomach. "What surprise?" I asked. He hesitated. Every part of his face worked overtime, eyes darting, lips twitching, mind scrambling. "I found a new house," he said finally, "a better one, closer to my job, closer to my mom. I went to look at it with my coworker because she knows the area. I didn't tell you because I wanted it to be ready first. A big reveal, a new start." A new start. The words stung, though they were meant to soothe. I stared at him,
Then, in the softest whisper, why did she write that I deserve to know everything? He froze. A beat too long. I don't know. Another lie. And I knew it. Everything inside me tightened. That instinctual, primal sense that something terrible lurked behind his calm expression. Then Jonah came bouncing into the room with a paper party hat half crushed in his fist. "Daddy, are we going to get my cake now?" Mark's expression changed instantly, snapping into warmth, affection, practiced ease. "Of course, buddy," he said, ruffling Jonah's hair. "Best cake ever." But while Jonah talked excitedly, Mark shot me a look over his head. A warning, a quiet plea, or something else entirely. Something I couldn't name yet but felt deep in my bones. A chill went through me. Because for the first time, as I held that pink envelope in my hand, Jonah at my side, Mark smiling too widely, I realized something with absolute clarity. This wasn't just about cheating. It wasn't just about lies. Something bigger was happening, something darker. And whatever surprise Mark had planned for that day, it wasn't going to be a new house. It wasn't going to be a fresh start. It was something much, much worse.
I didn't realize how long I'd been standing in the doorway until my feet started to ache. The sun had shifted just enough to cast a warm streak of light across the floor, and for a second, it reminded me of birthdays past, when I'd wake up early to frost a cake, humming to myself, imagining the look on my son's face when he saw it. Now all I could picture was that envelope burning in my hands. I finally stepped into the room, closing the door behind me so gently it barely made a sound. I sat on the edge of our bed, my bed now, I supposed, and laid the envelope on my lap. My fingers remained curled, twitching with leftover adrenaline. I stared at my own name written in the handwriting I'd memorized years ago, back when it felt like a promise instead of a warning. I tried to inhale deeply, but my breath stuttered, shaky. "Why today?" I whispered to no one. "Why my baby's birthday?" There was no answer, only the soft ticking of the clock above the wardrobe. I didn't open the letter, not yet. I was scared of the words waiting inside, scared of what they would confirm about a marriage I had spent years trying to protect, patch, and justify. I placed the letter beside me. I rubbed both palms over my face, feeling the sticky remnants of icing I hadn't washed off properly. My hands smelled like vanilla. The room smelled like stillness and old laundry. And my heart, it smelled like fear. I needed air. I stood up, straightened my clothes, and went back outside. The afternoon light felt harsher now, unforgiving. As soon as I stepped out into the living room, my mother-in-law was already standing there, like she'd been waiting. Her arms were crossed. Her expression was pinched with something I couldn't read. Not guilt, not even hesitation. "Did you get it?" she asked. I didn't answer. She took my silence as permission to continue. "It's better this way," she said softly. "For everyone." I looked at her. Really looked, and something settled inside me. Not calm, not rage. Something quieter. A tired sort of knowing. "Where is Daniel?" I asked. She hesitated, eyes flicking away for the first time that afternoon. "He's at the hotel. With her." I felt my chest hollow out. Her. The woman I didn't even know existed. The woman she had chosen to protect over me. The woman she believed my son deserved as a stepmother. I swallowed hard and held onto the back of a chair for balance. "So you're telling me," I said quietly, "that on the morning of my son's 6th birthday, my husband stayed the night with another woman, and you drove here to give me divorce papers?" She didn't speak. "That's the story you want to stand behind?" I asked. Her lips tightened, but she nodded.
Then she stepped closer, too close, and laid a hand on my arm like she was comforting a child. I pulled away, and her hand dropped uselessly. "You don't get to call me that. Not today." A flicker of irritation passed over her face, but she smoothed it quickly. "Well," she said, lifting her purse, "if you need anything, call him directly." I let out a tiny, humorless breath. "Believe me," I murmured, "I will." She didn't like the tone. I saw it in the way her jaw set. She walked to the door without another word, heels clicking in tidy, decisive taps. When she reached the threshold, she turned back. "Don't ruin the party for the children. Try to keep things pleasant." And then she closed the door behind her. The house felt colder once she was gone. I stood in the middle of the living room staring at the decorations I'd hung hours earlier. Blue streamers, foil balloons, little paper stars. Suddenly they felt out of place, like props in a play I hadn't agreed to be in. I sank onto the couch and rested my head against the back cushion. The envelope still sat on our bed, waiting for me like a sentence. But I couldn't open it. Not yet. Not before the party. Not before I heard the truth directly from Daniel's mouth. Just then my phone buzzed. I reached for it slowly, already knowing who it was. Daniel's name lit up the screen. For a moment, I considered letting it ring, letting him wait, but I answered. "Hello?" My voice sounded almost steady. There was a pause. I could hear the low hum of traffic behind him. "Did Mom talk to you?" I closed my eyes. "She did." He exhaled like he'd been holding his breath all morning. "Good," he said. "Good." A strange calm washed over me, not because of his words, but because of their finality. "Where are you?" I asked. "At the hotel. Look, I'm coming later, okay? I'll be there for the cake, I promise." I stared at the wall, tracing the faint shadow of one of the balloons swaying. "You didn't even say happy birthday to your son," I whispered. Silence. Then, quietly, "I'll make it up to him." I didn't reply. "I know this is hard," he said, "but please don't make today about us." I opened my eyes, and something in me, something soft and patient, finally cracked. "Daniel?" My voice steadied in a way I didn't expect. "This is about us. You made sure of that." Another long silence. Then he said, almost defensively, "I wasn't happy anymore." I nodded to myself. It was the one truth he'd said all day and the one thing I'd felt long before this morning. "Come to the party. We'll talk after." He hesitated. "Yeah, okay." And then the line went dead. I set the phone down slowly. The living room was too quiet, too still. I could hear my heartbeat again, loud, restless, conflicted. But beneath all that mess, something new whispered through me. Resolute. Not anger, not revenge, just resolute. I stood up, walked back to the bedroom, and stared at the envelope on the bed. But I still didn't open it. Not today. Today belonged to my son, not to betrayal. I straightened my posture, wiped my face, and walked toward the kitchen to check the food. But inside, something was shifting. I could feel it. A storm was coming, and for the first time, I wasn't the one afraid of it. By 4 o'clock, the house had transformed from quiet tension into a whirl of voices, laughter, and the kind of cheerful chaos only children can create. The front door swung open every few minutes as friends and family trickled in, carrying wrapped gifts and balloons that scraped softly against the ceiling. I kept my smile ready, steady, warm, practiced.
I'd worn that same smile through a lot of things in my marriage, but today it felt heavier than usual. "Happy birthday!" someone shouted as a pair of kids ran past me, nearly knocking over a bowl of chips. The living room filled with bright colors and bright faces, all oblivious to the storm circling inside my chest. My son, Daniel Jr., tore around the house with that fearless excitement he got from his father. He wore a blue paper crown and kept checking to make sure the back wasn't crooked. "Mom, Mom, look," he called, spinning to show off his superhero shirt. "You look so handsome," I said, kissing the top of his head. He smelled like shampoo and frosting and the leftover sunshine he'd soaked in earlier when he'd been bouncing on the backyard trampoline. For a few beautiful seconds, nothing else existed. Not the envelope on my bed, not the hotel room where my husband had slept last night, not the way my mother-in-law's voice still echoed in my ears. Just my boy, just his joy. I held on to that. As the minutes passed, small conversations drifted around me. "Where's Daniel? He's not here yet? Did he get stuck at work?" Each question felt like a tiny tap on my rib cage, reminding me of the hollow space where his presence should have been. I smiled through them, shrugged lightly, made excuses I prayed no one would analyze too deeply. "He'll be here," I said more than once. He wouldn't miss his son's birthday. But each time I said it, the words tasted less and less true. My friend Kendra squeezed my shoulder as she poured punch into tiny cups. "You good?" "I'm fine," I said automatically. She paused, studied me. "You sure? You look tired." I swallowed the truth down. "I just didn't sleep well." She nodded gently, but her eyes lingered on me longer than usual. She wasn't fooled, but she was kind enough not to press. The music played softly. I'd chosen upbeat songs, hoping they'd drown out the noise in my head. In the kitchen, steam fogged the edges of the oven door as the macaroni baked. The smell of butter and cheddar floated through the house, mixing with the sweet scent of the birthday cake still waiting to be cut. I moved through my home like a host and a ghost at the same time. People laughed, children squealed, and inside me, the minutes tightened like a fist. By 5 o'clock, there was no denying it. He was late. Not traffic late, not running an errand late. Late in the way that meant choice. Kendra stood beside me near the kitchen doorway, watching me watch the time. "You want me to call him?" she asked softly. I shook my head. "He knows what time it is." She didn't argue. I stepped into the living room, clapping my hands lightly. "All right, everybody, gifts first or cake first?" A chorus of "Cake!" broke out from the kids, and Daniel Jr. practically levitated with excitement. "Cake it is," I said, smiling. I went to the fridge, hands steady even though the rest of me wasn't. I lifted the cake carefully, white frosting, little blue stars, a number 6 candle waiting at the center. Everyone gathered around the table. Phones came out. The lights dimmed a little bit. And just as I was about to light the candle, the front door opened. Every head turned. Daniel stepped inside. His shirt was wrinkled, like he'd thrown it on in a rush. His eyes scanned the room briefly before landing on me, and I saw something flicker there. Not love, not regret. Nerves. He cleared his throat. "Sorry I'm late," he said, loud enough for the room to hear. My mother-in-law followed behind him, carrying a gift bag that still had the receipt taped to the side. She didn't meet my eyes. A few guests said, "Hey, Daniel." Others just nodded politely. I didn't say a word. Instead, I struck the match and lit the candle. The tiny flame stood straight and bright, a stark contrast to the heaviness in the room. "All right," I said, my tone smooth as silk. "Let's sing." Everyone started. "Happy birthday to you." Daniel moved closer, standing just a little too far away to be natural. His hands were buried deep in his pockets. My son beamed, blowing out the candle with one giant puff. Cheers erupted. People clapped, laughed, snapped photos. I cut the first slice. And only then did I turn to Daniel. "You made it," I said, quiet enough that only he could hear. "I told you I would." But his jaw was tight. "You missed everything but the cake." He shifted. "I'm here now." "Are you?" I asked. He blinked, his face tightening with a mix of discomfort and irritation. "This isn't the time," he murmured. "You're the one who made it the time," I whispered back. His eyes flicked around us, checking to see if anyone was listening. They weren't. Everyone was busy handing out cake slices and complimenting the decorations. I handed our son a plate, ruffling his hair as he ran off to join his cousins. Then I stepped closer to Daniel. Not enough to make a scene, just enough to make sure he heard me. "When the party ends," I said, "you and I are going to talk." He swallowed. "Fine." My mother-in-law hovered behind him like a shadow, eyes narrowing slightly. Territorial, cautious. She knew something was coming. She could feel it. And for the first time that day, I let her see the calm rising in me. Not fear, not hurt, determination. Because the letter she handed me that morning might have been written by her son. But the ending of this story, that would be written by me. As the party settled into its comfortable rhythm again, I found myself floating through the room, topping off drinks, picking up stray napkins, answering casual questions with automatic warmth. On the outside, I looked like any mother hosting a birthday for her child. Inside, though, I was measuring the minutes until the guests left and the truth would finally have to stand in the open. But children have a way of pulling you back into the moment, even when your heart is cracking underneath your ribs. "Mom, look!" Daniel Jr. shouted from the living room, holding a toy truck someone gifted him. "It lights up!" I smiled, kneeling beside him. "That's amazing, baby." He pressed a button and the wheels glowed in neon colors. His laughter rose above the noise around us, light and unburdened. For a second, I wondered how much of today he would remember when he was older and whether he'd ever understand what his father had done on the morning of his birthday. I prayed he wouldn't carry those pieces. From across the room, I felt Daniel watching us. There was a stiffness in his posture, hands shoved back into his pockets, shoulders rigid, jaw clenched tight like he was bracing for something, or hiding something, or both. My mother-in-law hovered close to him, whispering every so often, casting glances toward me that she thought were subtle. They weren't, but I pretended not to notice. It was my son's birthday. I wouldn't give her the satisfaction of a scene. Around 6:30, guests slowly trickled out. Kendra hugged me for a little longer than usual. "You need anything?" she murmured. "You call me, big or small." "I will," I said, the words honest. When the last car pulled away and the house finally quieted, I turned around to face Daniel. He stood near the sofa, arms crossed, as if preparing for a debate he'd been rehearsing in his mind all day. My mother-in-law sat on a bar stool in the kitchen, watching like this was entertainment. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and nodded toward the hallway. "Let's talk," I said. Daniel shot a glance at his mother, as if asking permission. Her mouth twitched. "If this is about the letter, I think I should—" "No," I cut in softly.
This is between us, just us. Daniel hesitated. She didn't like it, but for once, she kept quiet. I walked into the bedroom, leaving the door slightly open, hoping this conversation would at least start with dignity. Daniel followed slowly, dragging each step like the floor was heavy. When the door clicked shut behind us, he exhaled, rubbing the back of his neck. "Look, I know you're upset." "Upset," I repeated, tasting the word. "That's one way to describe it." He sighed. "I'm trying to be civil." "Civil?" I stepped closer. "Your mother came into my home with a divorce letter before I'd even set out the party plates on our son's birthday, and you call me uncivil?" He looked away. I watched his profile, the line of his jaw, the slight twitch of his cheek, the way he couldn't meet my eyes. Cowardice has a smell, a stillness, a silence, and he wore it like cologne. I reached over to the bed and picked up the envelope he'd signed. I held it out. "Explain," I said softly. "Everything. And don't lie. Not today." He swallowed, hard. Then finally, he lifted his head. "I met someone," he said. The words shouldn't have shocked me, but they hit like a dull blade to the chest. "How long?" I asked. "About 6 months." I nodded once. "Who is she?" He hesitated. "Her name is Karina." The name struck me, not because I knew her, but because of his hesitation, the way he said it, like he'd practiced it, like he'd said it tenderly many times before. "Where did you meet her?" He hesitated again. "At the gym." "Does she know you're married?" He flinched. "Yes." I closed my eyes for one moment, one long inhale, one trembling exhale. "And your mother?" I asked. "How long has she known?" He rubbed his face with both hands. "A few months." "A few months," I repeated. "So she kept your secret, she protected you, and she helped you leave." "She just wanted what's best for me," he muttered. "What's best for you?" I echoed. "Not what's best for our son." He didn't respond. I felt something fall into place inside me then. Not defeat, not rage, but clarity. Like I'd been squinting for months, and suddenly the world sharpened. "You brought her to a hotel last night," I said quietly. He blinked in surprise. "How did you—" "Because if you respected me, even a little, you wouldn't have been late today. You wouldn't have come into this house smelling like cheap cologne and guilt." He looked down at his shirt, as if realizing something. "I changed." "It doesn't matter." My voice was soft. "It's done." He opened his mouth to say something, maybe an excuse, maybe a plea, but I held up a hand. "I'm not begging. I'm not fighting for you. I spent years fighting for a marriage I was in alone." He looked stunned. Maybe he thought I'd cry or scream or ask him to stay. But I was calm. Too calm. "If you want this divorce," I said, "we'll handle it. Properly. Legally. Without your mother acting as courier." He nodded, slowly. "And our son," I asked, "do you intend to be a father to him, or only when it's convenient?" The question landed squarely. He winced. "I'll be there for him," he said. "Prove it." He nodded again, eyes glassy now, like reality was sinking in, maybe for the first time. I walked to the door and opened it. "We're done here for today." Daniel stepped toward me as if wanting to say something more, but the look in my eyes must have stopped him. He brushed past me and walked down the hallway. My mother-in-law immediately stood. "Well?" she asked him eagerly. Daniel didn't answer her. He just walked right out the door. She stared after him, confused, then turned to me. "What did you say to him?" she demanded. "Only the truth," I replied. Her lips tightened. "This isn't over." "On the contrary," I said softly, "it is." Her nostrils flared, but she said nothing else. She grabbed her purse and followed her son out into the evening, letting the door slam behind her. The house fell silent. I closed my eyes and let the quiet settle around me like a blanket. For the first time all day, I breathed.